What is going on, guys? This is the Pat Goat TCG, and this is my first video. And today we're going to be doing a deck profile of a Mystic Undead constructed Kryptic deck. So I opened my first box of Wicked Prophecy just a couple days ago, and I've been brewing and trying to come up with some new combinations to use with the new cards. And this is what I've come up with. It's kind of a control mid-range build. So yeah, let's get right into it. So we have a good amount of 1-drops in the deck. The deck is designed to kind of fill the graveyard for payoffs in the late game. So first we have 2 copies of Pollux. Pollux is just one of my favorite cards. It can be a very good defensive or offensive card. Casting spells on your opponent's turn, and also casting spells during your attack phase to give him toxic can make him hard to block as well as hard to get past. So 2 copies of Pollux. Next we have 2 copies of Juno. Juno's great, just filling your graveyard, 2 extra cards in there, and you're going to see why filling the graveyard is especially good in this deck. Rounding out the 1-drops here, we have 3 copies of Freedonia. And Freedonia is good to filter your draws as well as to fill the graveyard as that probe, and the deck is filled with a lot of 1-drop spells to make good use of Freedonia. Also, 1-drops are very important as aggro is very prolific, so having those blockers in the early game is very important. So now going into our 2-drop creatures, we have 3 copies of Azizi. Azizi is an interesting choice, but there's 2 reasons that I kind of leaned into her, and that is sidestep, as well as that she is great in the graveyard. So say you're playing against a control deck, you have Azizi in your graveyard, you don't really want it to get countered, but this would be uncounterable. So you mill her with Juno, you pay 2 later in the game, you get a free, not necessarily a free, but another sidestepper on the board later in the game. Next, one of our first mill payoffs is Oscar. So Oscar is a new Wicked Prophecy card, and basically, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, if there are 10 or more spells in your limbo, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you may put a citizen revealed this way directly onto the island. So that is a very good payoff for once you do fill your graveyard, and it can be very useful, gaining card advantage and also gaining uncounterable creatures onto the island. Lastly, for our 2-drops, we have Corinna, Cautious Courtier. This is also a new Wicked Prophecy card, and it reads, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, you may draw 1, then probe 1, then place a card from your hand on top of your deck. So it's very good for gaining card advantage as well as filtering your draws, as well as setting the top of your deck, perhaps for an Oscar trigger or for, just making your draws more consistent. And it also fills the graveyard. So next we're going to go into our big creature drops, kind of our big payoffs in the deck, and what we kind of want to get onto the battlefield to help us win the game. First we have Argus, Heinous Arcanist. I don't have 3 copies of Amara, but this card would be great with Amara, especially with the many 1-drops we're running in the deck. So say we sack one of our 1-drops at the end of turn, we probe 3, probe 4, or actually it's probe 1, total soul cost. Probe 1, then we get the Amara trigger, return one of our spells from our grave to our hand. Just a very good card to have on field with Amara. If you have Amara, definitely put her in this deck. Next we have Alona, also a great new card from Wicked Prophecy. You can discard this card and pay green or black, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your limbo pile. Then if you have her in your graveyard, you can pay 2 and return her into your hand. So very good for filling the graveyard, also just a big body for late in games. Great new card. Next we have Noland. Nolan has sidestep. Whenever he destroys an 11-year card, draw 1, probe 1, and when he dies, draw 1. Just a staple card, amazing attacker. We also have Argus. Argus is great with sidestep and with the many 1-drops in the deck. The second ability is also very relevant, paying 1, sacrificing a creature, and draw a card. Next we have Pluto, Raging Goliath, new Wicked Prophecy card. Just a great new reanimator that can't be countered. Engaging and paying X to return. Any citizen is so versatile. If you need a sidestepper, you can get Azizi. If you need a 1-drop for more filtering, you can get Fredonia. Just any amount of very versatile card here. Next we have Davy. Davy is very good. I didn't really know he existed until I pulled him, but casting any 1-drop, and he has Eager on attack, so capital punishments, and you're going to see the many 1-drop spells we have in the deck as well. Another one of is Dumuzi. I really just like the art, and he's pretty good with the 1-drops and filling your graveyard, so when our 1-drops are dying, milling 2, and then also filling our graveyard more. I do have the 1 copy of Amara. If you have 3 copies, put 3 copies. She's amazing. That's really all I have to say about that. And another mill payoff is the Henry. So I haven't seen many people play Henry, but with the many citizens we are playing, being able to abolish 5 citizens and return any spell card from your graveyard to your hand, it's kind of a worse Amara, but it doesn't require anything to die. You can do it at instant speed, as long as you have creatures in your graveyard, which we will definitely have with this deck. Next, we're going to be moving on to the spell cards. So starting at our big spell cards, we have 4 copies of Underworld Escort. This card reminds me of Memory Deluge from Magic, if you're familiar with that. And if you're controlling your opponent well enough, this can kind of just be a backbreaker. Allowing, you're basically getting 4 cards. 2 of them probably are going to your grave, 2 of them are going to your hand. So that's great for filling your graveyard, for Henry, and for Oscar. So just a very good card if you can get it off. It's also good fixing for the green and blue mana. Next we have a new Wicked Prophecy card. A very good removal spell that I'm a fan of is Unmake. So it says put up to 2 target citizens you don't control with a combined total soul cost of X or less on the bottom of their owner's deck, where X is equal to the number of cards in your hand. So we're going to have a lot of cards in our hand in this deck, as many of our cards recycle each other, or we're drawing extra cards. So for 4 mana, bouncing 2 of your opponent's citizens back to their bottom is very good. Next, for our control part, we have 3 copies of Rash Judgment, just countering those big spells or big citizens, and probing 1, filling the graveyard more. Very useful. We have 2 copies of Infinity Blade, just a very good removal spell. 3 copies of Dead on Arrival for countering those citizens when Rash Judgment's a little bit too expensive, also good fixing. 2 copies of Soaring Cascades, filling the graveyard, 1 mana, getting our probes off, also fixing. Just a very solid card. We also have 2 copies of Midnight Meander to interfere with any graveyard shenanigans from our opponent. Also just getting citizens back from our own graveyard as well. Lastly, we have our Boneyard Surveys. An amazing card, fills the graveyard, gets cards in your hand, filters, fixes, does everything. And also Capital Punishment, 3 copies of that as well. Can't really go without these cards in this deck, so if you have them, put them in. And lastly, we have just a couple one-ofs that I'm trying. We have 1 copy Renewed Tenacity, just to get back our big creatures if they get milled, or we can discard them to Infinity Blade. Just a lot of use for that. If you have more copies of this, consider putting them in, or consider putting more big drops into the deck if you want to utilize this card more. And lastly, we have a new Wicked Prophecy card, Memento Mori. Return up to 2 citizens with a total soul cost of 1 each from your limbo to the island. So very good with Pollux, Fredonia, Juno. It triggers Enter the Island effects. It's a very good new Wicked Prophecy card that I'm excited to try out. And a card that I'm considering putting into the deck is Bastion of Knowledge. It hasn't really made the cut yet, because I don't know why. Well, I guess it gives me some more filtering options if I'm really looking for spells or counter spells. So maybe down the line I'll end up throwing this in the deck. But for now, that is the complete list. That is the Mystic Undead kind of friendship deck. Control, mid-range. Give it a try. Tell me what you think. If it needs more fixing, if it needs more big creatures. Because I'm kind of just testing things out right now with the new Wicked Prophecy cards. Excited to open some more boxes and get playing soon here. So again, thank you for watching. Subscribe. Everyone's new at this point. This is my first video, so thank you again, and have a good day.